Story 4. Rewritten version. The first grenade landed close enough that there was no time to shout. I saw the shape hit the dirt near my boot, small and dark against the red earth, and my leg moved before the rest of me understood what I was doing. One hard kick sent it over the lip of the position and out toward the brush. I did not see where it landed. There was no time. The firing was still coming from the trees. The machine gun was still in front of me. Marines were still packed into the same scraped-out patch of earth, shoulders low, helmets nearly touching the dirt wall, every man trying to make himself smaller without leaving his weapon. Then the second grenade came in. This one landed inside the position, too close to kick, too close to grab, too close to think. There was no clean angle for my foot, no empty space between the Marines beside me, no slow second where a man could weigh one choice against another. The machine gun was right there with us. The ammunition was right there. The men were right there. The grenade lay in the dirt like a final answer. I went down over it. In July of 1966, I was a Marine machine gunner with Company H, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, operating near Cam Lo in northern South Vietnam. The operation was called Hastings. On paper, that meant Marines moving through Quảng Trị Province near the demilitarized zone, trying to find and fight North Vietnamese army forces that had come into the area. On the ground, it meant heat, mud, red dirt, wet clothes, tangled vegetation, and a fight where a few yards of brush could hide more danger than any map could show. The country near Cam Lo did not give a man much distance. A rifleman could vanish inside the green. A muzzle flash could appear and disappear before you could place it. A sound could seem to come from the front, then the side, then nowhere at all. The jungle broke every clean line into pieces. As a machine gunner, my world was smaller than the operation. The gun, the belt, the sector in front of us, the Marines to my left and right, the patch of earth that had to hold. That was enough. A machine gun in a position was not just another weapon. When the enemy pressed close, men listened for it. They trusted it. It gave the line weight. It made the ground in front of us dangerous for anyone trying to cross it. If the gun stopped, everyone nearby felt the hole it left, so I stayed close to it. The belt had to feed. The barrel had to point where it mattered. The gun had to stay ready even when sweat ran into my eyes and grit worked into my hands. Ammunition had to stay where I could reach it. The men around me had to know the gun was still there, still alive, still able to answer. The position itself was cramped from the start. It was not a trench from a training picture. It was a scraped-out fighting hole, earth piled up where we could manage it, cover just high enough to matter and not high enough to make anyone feel safe. The wall in front protected us from some things and trapped us with others. There was barely room to move. A knee in the wrong place could kink the belt. A hand in the wrong place could block another Marine. A man rising too high could draw fire into the whole position. Every movement had to be small, fast, and useful. The trees ahead looked close, too close. That was the part that stayed with me even before the grenades. The enemy was not a distant shape somewhere beyond artillery range. He was close enough that every nerve in the position knew it. Close enough that the brush seemed to breathe. Close enough that a man could imagine hands moving just beyond the green. Then the firing came in hard. The first cracks snapped over the position and struck the earth wall in front of us. Dirt jumped, leaves cut loose. Someone dropped lower beside me, his shoulder hitting mine. I got the gun working, the metal shaking under my hands, the belt pulling through, the sound filling the hole until there was nothing left but recoil, smoke, and the narrow piece of jungle I had to hold. The enemy fire kept us down, but that was not its only purpose. It fixed our eyes forward. That was how close danger worked. Rifles and automatic fire made a man stare into the trees. They made him watch the muzzle flashes, the branches, the place where he thought the next movement would appear. And while every eye was forward, another threat could come in a low arc, through broken light, small enough to miss until it was already in the dirt. The first grenade came that way. At first it was just motion, then it struck near my boot. My body knew before my mind did. The kick was not graceful. It was not aimed like a man kicking a ball across a field. It was a desperate swing of the boot from inside a cramped fighting position. A hard strike to send that piece of metal anywhere except among us. The grenade went over the lip, out, away. That was all I knew. No one sat up to watch it. No one had that luxury. The gun still had to face forward. The enemy was still there. The position was still under pressure. Then the second grenade landed. The first one had given me an answer. The second one took it away. It landed in a place where my foot could not solve the problem. The hole was too tight. The Marines were too close. The machine gun and the men in the dirt wall, all crowded around the same few feet of ground. A boot might miss. A hand might not reach. A half second of choosing could cost every man in the position. The grenade did not look large. That was the terrible thing. It was just a small piece of metal lying in the earth. Small enough for a hand, heavy enough to decide the next second for everyone near it. I remember the shape. I remember the dirt around it. I remember knowing there was no time left. Then my knees hit the ground. My hands went down. My chest came over the grenade. The world narrowed until nothing else existed. Not Operation Hastings, not Cam Low, not the company, not the battalion, not even the trees ahead. Only the ground under me, the metal beneath my body, and the blast that should have come next. A grenade under a man is not an idea. It is not a story yet. It is not a medal, not a report, not a sentence anyone can arrange later. It is pressure against the dirt. It is ribs locked around a breath. It is every muscle bracing for metal to come through flesh. It is the body waiting for something it cannot survive and still trying to hold itself there. I expected the explosion. Every part of me expected it. Nothing came. For 1 second, that made no sense. Then another second passed, still nothing. The silence was not relief at first. It was wrong. The mind kept waiting for the sound. The body stayed tight, refusing to believe it had been spared. There was no room for understanding. Maybe the fuse failed. Maybe mud interfered. Maybe the grenade had been damaged. Maybe chance had decided something no man in that position could command. I did not know. I only knew that the blast had not come. My face was near the dirt. My hands were dug into the ground. The Marines around me were still alive. That was the first fact. The second fact came right after it. The enemy was still out there. A hand caught at my gear. Someone shifted beside me. The world returned in pieces. Hot air, burned powder, the machine gun, the earth wall, the trees beyond it, the sound of fire still moving through the brush. There was no clean ending to the moment. Combat did not stop because one grenade failed. The position did not become safe because we had not been killed. The enemy did not wait while we understood what had happened. I came up from the dirt because the gun still had to work. My arms worked first, then my legs. Then my hands found the metal again. The machine gun was still there. That mattered. The belt had to be checked. The feed had to be right. The sector had to be watched. The position had survived the grenade, but surviving 1 second did not guarantee the next one. A fighting position lives only if the men inside it return to work faster than fear can take command. So we returned to work. I got my hands back on the gun. The forward edge of the hole came back into focus. The brush became the center of the world again. The close feeling did not leave. It stayed under the skin. Every small dark shape near the ground seemed larger than it should. Every tossed shadow had weight. The mind kept making a grenade out of anything it could not explain, but the gun was pointed forward. The men were still in the position. The line had not opened. The first grenade had gone out. The second had stayed silent. Now the enemy still had to be held back. Fire came again from the trees. I pressed into the gun and answered. The belt moved. The weapon shook. Brass and smoke and dirt filled the small space around us. Somewhere beside me, a Marine shouted something I could not make out. Another man shifted ammunition closer. Someone kept low and watched the side, because the grenades had already taught us how close the enemy could get. Nothing felt clean after that. The position felt smaller. The earth felt thinner. The trees looked nearer than before. But the work was clear. Keep the gun alive. Keep the sector covered. Keep the men beside you from being overrun. There are moments in combat that people later try to arrange into simple words. They can say the date. They can say the unit. They can say where the operation was. They can write that one grenade was kicked away. that another was covered by a body, that it failed to explode. Those words are true. But inside the hole, it was simpler and harder than that. Something landed. A foot moved. Something else landed. A body went down. The blast did not come. Then the fight continued. That was the part no clean version can fully hold. The day did not pause to become meaningful. The Marines around me still had weapons in their hands. The enemy still existed as movement and fire beyond the brush. The machine gun still had to make the ground in front of us dangerous. The fear did not disappear. It was there in the way I stayed low. In the way every man looked twice at the dirt near his boots. In the way the position seemed too tight for all the living bodies inside it. It was there when my hands returned to the gun and did what they had to do, even though some part of me was still lying over that silent grenade waiting. Fear was not gone. It had simply been beaten to the next task. The patch of earth beneath my chest stayed silent. Because it stayed silent, the position stayed alive. Because the position stayed alive, the gun stayed in the fight. And because the gun stayed in the fight, I faced the trees again.
This reconstruction was inspired by the documented actions of Patrick Gallagher, a lance corporal and machine gunner with Company H, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 3rd Marine Division, who received the Navy Cross for the real wartime episode behind this story.